I now welcome our closest ally in this fight to make our furniture industry master plan more than just a document, and rather a vision of success for our industry. The Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. Ms. Ncumisa Mhlauli, Chief Director, Agro-Processing. Ms. Ncumisa has more than 20 years of experience in the field of agricultural economics and agro-processing. As a chief agricultural economist, Ncumisa has served in a number of programs, both in private and public sectors, mainly in conducting agricultural economic studies relating to policy, strategies, feasibility studies, marketing surveys, and evaluation exercises for various government departments and municipalities. Ncumisa, we look forward to your presentation on how the master plan can now be actioned as a deliberate plan for transformation, growth, and development in our country. Ncumisa, all over to you.
Thanks, Jackie, and also thanks to Safi for this opportunity. And good afternoon, colleagues. I will try to be as brief as possible, colleagues, because some of my colleagues, they've covered me in some of the issues that I was going to talk about in terms of the furniture master plan. I think when you do good work, so, you see, when people, present, that work, and also to give, progress in platforms like this. So I must appreciate, I think, our colleagues from FPNM, CITA, and Proudly SA, and also Safi, in terms of, I think, excellent work that they are doing in terms of the furniture industry. And I must also indicate that this is a very important sector in our economy, colleagues, as I think colleagues have alluded to the fact that we're talking about almost 80% of small businesses that are in this industry. Colleagues, let me just move to the first slide, colleagues, without wasting any time. Next slide, please. So I will just take you through the furniture master plan, the pillars of the furniture industry master plan, as well as key action. This is the vision of the master plan, colleagues, which is a fast-growing, profitable, inclusive, as well as sustainable South African furniture industry. And I must indicate, when you're talking about master plan, colleagues, it's a social compact between government, labor, as well as the private sector. It is a partnership, colleagues. All the colleagues have been talking about partnership and partnership. So this is what this plan is all about, partnership between various stakeholders, or between the social partners. So in terms of the furniture industry master plan, these are the objectives on your left-hand side, which is the protection of the industry and the retention of existing capacity in the immediate term, as well as sustainable growth of the industry with increased local supply. I don't want to go through the pillars now in this slide, but I'll talk to more on the pillars in the next slide. Can we move to the next slide, please? So in terms of pillar number one of the master plan, I'll try to be as brief as possible, Jackie. The pillar number one is talking about support demand for local manufactured furniture and for greater supply chain consistency. Here, colleagues, the key actions that we are undertaking together with social partners around engagements with the retailers, because what we're trying to do is to reduce the imports. We know for a fact that at this point in time, our imports, especially cheap imports, they are rising at this point in time. And retailers, unfortunately, we have to talk to them to make sure that they reduce the cheap imports. So we're having a sort of one-on-one engagement with retailers, at the same time looking at import replacement, opportunities for the country. Most of the colleagues or previous speakers have talked about localization, where we manufacture the products locally, at the same time to make sure that we're able to sell our products, especially to the retailers as well as the government. And then at the same time, we are also looking at effectiveness of state procurement in terms of, furniture through designation of, different types of our products, including office as well as school, as well as bed and mattresses, because we know for a fact that government is procuring quite a lot of furniture. We're talking about almost plus 2 billion rands of that government is procuring now in terms of the furniture. furniture. Those are the latest statistics that I've seen. Proudly SA has talked about the portal, which is mainly promoting our furniture and also market access for our furniture, as well as SAFI. So those are some of the activities that we are busy with in terms of this pillar. But I must indicate that retailers have to come on board, colleagues. That's what is important around this, to reduce especially the imports. The next pillar is around to grow small and medium-sized manufacturers of lounge as well as case goods into larger and more stable companies through an innovative partnership between retailers, manufacturers, as well as government. And here we are talking about, colleagues, the discussions are around, establishing, furniture manufacturing growth fund to support mainly the small and medium-sized, enterprises. We are also wanting partnerships not only within a government, but also with the manufacturers themselves, as well as the retailers, to be able to support these small and medium-sized enterprises to be able to manufacture more of the goods that we want to see in the market, colleagues. So that work is ongoing, as well as establishing of panels of professionals to support the SMMEs, and also to arrange also one-on-one with the manufacturers as well as retailers, so as to be able to create that resource or that fund. So that work also is still ongoing, colleagues. And then moving to pillar number 3, which is looking at trade interventions, colleagues, I must indicate that I think the speaker from SARS has talked more around the issues around the tariff heading clarifications, but in terms of the rebate on WAPNIT fabric, that has been effected as of 28th of May 2021. SART has talked about the work that they are doing, beautiful work in terms of the Furniture Forum colleagues, including, by the way, ensuring labeling requirements are being implemented, especially of all the goods that we have, furniture products that we have in South Africa, colleagues. That is another piece of work that is also very important in terms of this testing, as well as the issues around the quality standards, working with the NRCS as well as South African Bureau of Standards, to make sure that we are able to protect our industry, colleagues, because the products that we see in the market, in most instances, the standard for the quality, it might be a big issue at this point in time, colleagues, the quality of products that we see in our market. So hence we need to sort of put a lot of emphasis around the quality of standards, especially for our furniture. I think the colleague has also from SARS has talked about the furniture training, which customs furniture training, which has already commenced, and I'm hoping that it will be concluded by end of November. So these are some of the key actions that are taking place in terms of trade information, including issues around tariff lines, issues around misdeclaration and under-declaration. So SARS is really, I think, on task in terms of this work, colleagues. And then moving to the next pillar, which is addressing raw material shortages, colleagues. I must indicate that we have seen that there is a shortage of raw material currently, colleagues. And some work that we are doing is engagement with both suppliers, one-on-one with some of the manufacturers, because we've seen we only have one or two, companies that in existence now in terms of manufacturing the raw material. This is going to pose a lot of problems to the industry, including, by the way, issues that are related to the rising, input cost, colleagues. So we need to manage this work very, very, very important together with SAFI colleagues. And I must indicate SAFI already has started some work in terms of raw material engagements around with the raw material chambers, just to finalize an action plan on the raw material. So there's a need for more players in terms of raw material, manufacturers in the country, because we're only talking about one or two raw material, manufacturers at this point in time. So that engagement with industry becomes very important in the work of the different testing, especially this testing. Moving to task team number 5, I don't want to talk about this because I think my colleagues from FP and MSITA, they've covered me very well in terms of improving the skills supply to the furniture industry. So I want to skip this because I don't want to spoil, I think, the words from our colleagues from FP and MSITA. But one of the issues that I think we are going to focus on is around skills development action plan, skills audit for the industry, as well as establish what trades are what skills are required or are are in demand at this point in time in the industry. So which is the work that I think FB and MCTA, they are dealing with through the master plan process. Moving to pillar number 6, which is to strengthen the institution that support the industry. Must indicate that the important work here is the discussion between SAFI as well as organized labor and employers, including, by the way, the bargaining council, so that we are able to restructure, to ensure that SAFI restructure into subsector chambers to better deliver and align to the needs of each chamber. So that work is very important from an institutional point of view. And then pillar number 7 is looking at the office as well as school furniture, and more important around the public procurement specification guidelines. We are almost done with this work, colleagues. I must indicate that already we have submitted our sort of inputs in terms of amendments of the public procurement, specification guidelines, which we call colleagues the designation and note, to make sure that we are able to procure, the products locally. As you would know that if you look at, for example, the bed, for example, office furniture, for example, we are looking at 85% designated for our locals, and then you're looking at the bed and mattress, 90% designated for our locals. So we want to make sure that we procure goods that are manufactured local, colleagues, and that can only happen through, I think, enforcement, especially in terms of the regulations, especially from the public sector point of view, the goods that we buy as well as the private sector. So that work in terms of amendment of the practice note, especially for the furniture procurement, that we are almost at an advanced stage with the National Treasury. The last pillar of the master plan is around transformation, colleagues. I must say, Chair, that a program director, I'm quite pleased with the work that is being done by the small businesses. I think the colleague that has presented the work around the chlorop factory, I must commend that work and also the transformation initiatives that we see in the country. I think the main issue there, we need to enforce, transformation in the industry. So this pillar, this task team, which is looking at the transformation of the furniture industry, has to focus on the transformation plan of the industry, and that has to also go into the different companies which have to sort of come up with their transformation plan. Without transformation, guys, we will be letting down, I think, some of the policy, priorities of government. So it's important that this work, I would say the CEOs of companies, they must lead this work to make sure that we're able to mainstream our sort of black players in the industry. I don't want to talk about opportunities, but these are the opportunities that we see, that there are great opportunities to compete with imports, especially on the lounges as well as case goods. And we've seen quite a lot of disruption and changes now in the markets, especially in the global market. But I must indicate that we need to make sure that we remain competitive as the country, we remain competitive as the industry, colleagues. And where we have to benchmark ourselves, let's benchmark ourselves. We cannot allow cheap imports to come into the country, especially cheap imports from China as well as Venezuela. So the opportunities that have been presented to us in terms of import replacements are very important, colleagues, so that we reduce our imports, as well as strong demand, local and good potential for exports. Colleagues, I must indicate that we are promoting localization at the same time promoting the exports, especially through the African Continental Free Trade Area, colleagues. So those are some of the opportunities that we see for the industry. The key is to expand and nurture existing medium-sized companies to help them grow and supply retailers more successfully. So we want to see that partnership between the medium-sized companies as well as the retailers, especially from a demand point of view, as well as supply point of view. There are, of course, quite a number of challenges, colleagues, which I think all of us, we have talked about, all the presenters, and some of the challenges that are related to transformation as well as skills development, as well as the issues around, resources, which is mainly the funding, which is a big constraint that we see now in terms of the industry, issues around the rising input costs, as well as the decline in terms of exports, as well as the issues around low demand. So those are some of the challenges that I think the industry should focus on going forward. But more important, the issues of cheap imports that we see, colleagues, we need to really address those issues as a collective. So this master plan is looking at all those issues, colleagues, that I'm talking about. in terms of, addressing and making sure the industry is able to grow and able to make sure that we transform the industry in the next few years. Can I then leave it there, Chair? Thank you so much. I think most of the issues have been covered very well by previous speakers, and thank you, much appreciated. I think much appreciation from staff in terms of this opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Numisa, for those insights. We are very keen also in terms of exploring how that 2 billion government procurement can also find its way through the Wekona initiative that we had just recently launched, where we are looking at really encouraging the participation of women as per the 40% that has been ring-fenced for women at large. So we actually do look forward to engaging further with yourself and with Bernadette around how we begin to turn that into a reality as well. And certainly the partnership with dtic is certainly one that we are looking forward at growing and also growing it into levels of an us and where we are seen as being in it together. We are working on a more strategic level to sustain and grow the furniture industry through unique South African products. With excitement now, we are looking forward to also hearing from Sarah how the announcement of the Africa Free Trade Agreement is going to be seeing fruition. We also acknowledge all the positive work that we've seen and the expected opportunities that will come through this initiative. For this reason, we are pleased to have Trade and Invest Africa agreement that is aimed at promoting exports between the various regions within the African continent. We welcome Ms. Sarah Dean, who has been with the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition since October 2000. She has dedicated her career around stakeholder relationship management and business lead generation, identifying and facilitating trade and investment projects, whilst also engaging with both private sector and government across Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. She has extensive experience in diverse industries and in managing relations with companies in different markets. Sarah, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, colleagues, and thank you for the opportunity to present this afternoon. First, I'd like to thank everybody for the very informative presentations that certainly gave insight into a very dynamic industry and sector. And from our side, I can only but to wish you all the success, especially during these very difficult and challenging times. Just to make, I have to make this very clear. I have been requested or have been informed by my director to do a presentation on what we as the DTI have to offer in terms of incentives, as well as how we go about promoting our exports, and not really to talk about the Africa Free Trade Agreement going forward. So if we can go ahead and I'll focus only on EMEA, the offerings that the DTIC has to offer. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, that the DTI, through a number of initiatives, have put together what we call export promotion tools. And we do this through having group trade missions, which is basically to introduce our local industries to new or existing markets. It also allows us to gain entry and to strengthen our existing networks, to exploit the number of free trade agreements, the bilateral and multilateral agreements, that we have existing with countries, whether they be Europe, the Americas, the Middle East and Asia, as well as the Far East. Encourage entry or expansion when experience is still limited. First-hand experience of market through direct contact, adjust perception of market potential and increase knowledge, and to establish networks so that that allows industries then to work with. Through these types of missions, we have what we call inward buying missions that allows foreign companies to come into South Africa to look at our potential and to meet business people, as well as to see how best we can collaborate in areas of mutual interest. We then look at outward selling missions, which is arranged through the Department of Trade and Industry. And these are basically to promote South Africa in terms of trade and investment opportunities. We also then do it through investment conferences, seminars, export, trade exhibitions, shows, and we also have what we call the individual exhibitions that companies are allowed to apply for. In terms of how we do this, we normally prepare a synopsis of the approved event and the reason for participation, which will include the country and sector information, which basically is motivation and market research information template, which we then provide for you. The people responsible or the person responsible will be the export manager, the investment manager, the foreign economic representative in a country, and the mission organizer, and that is all part of the DTI. We then prepare the motivation and market survey report, which is handed to each and every participant. A draft advert is then prepared. Through this, we then advertise and send it out to the various industries and bodies concerned, the export councils, as well as private individuals who wish to participate. This will also be done through our websites that we have and include free editorials as such. Once the advert has been finalized and the content has been approved, we then submit it to the Foreign Office for placement, and this is then circulated. We then basically go through our database of potential participants for the mission. We then draft an invitation. This is then emailed to potential participants, and application forms are forwarded for those who are interested and who have shown an interest. The applications received from potential participants are processed within the business unit with inputs on suitability of the buyers, investors that we receive from both export promotion or investment promotion. We then present this to EMEA to ensure that each participant or applicant is compliant. And there's a whole adjudication process that normally takes place. And this is quite a stringent process, and it is a lot of work filling in these forms. But we are working with government funds, and therefore we need to ensure that we comply with all the requirements that are set out to us. Then once this has been done, we will then inform the potential participant or applicant whether they have been successful or not. Then what we normally do with an inward mission, if we say, for example, bringing in a delegation from Egypt, especially and I can say that because I've worked in Egypt and I know that they have a very robust furniture industry. If we're bringing in people from the industry into South Africa, we will then set up a database of all the local companies. We will send out an invitation asking them whether they would be interested in meeting their Egyptian counterparts. And this is I'm only using as an example. Once this has been done, it's a complete matchmaking process. We set up and draft the appointments where we will arrange all the logistics and finalize, and then set up all the meetings for the potential investor or business people to meet, where we can then facilitate the business process. While we're also doing that, I have mentioned that we do coordinate the one-on-one meetings as well. We manage all the logistics around it. And then once that is all completed and the meetings have taken place, you will be given a standard questionnaire where we ask you to evaluate the entire event and what your expectations were and whether that has been met in terms of what you would like to do and what you needed for your particular industry. When this process unfolds, it normally takes anything between 3 to 4 months when we prepare for this. In fact, our program of events is done a year in advance. Already we've started for 2022-23. We look at all activities planned. So we do it 1 year in advance. But of course, COVID has had a real impact on our ability to focus and to do all the work that we needed to do, because all this is really driven, by people, meeting people. And while webinars is a useful tool in some industries and in some sectors, you need to feel things, you need to see things, you need to look at things to see how it's made and whether it meets the standards that is required. But it's the same with outward buying missions, which we encourage a lot of industries and sectors to participate. We believe that you do get maximum mileage out of participating in our missions, which is done, and we normally do it, as I said, 3 to 4 months in advance. And the same then will happen. We will prepare a survey, we will do a proper market analysis, we will identify the countries which we believe will give us maximum benefit and where we see potential for South African exports. We will then prepare the advert as usual. Once again, applicants and participants are identified and invited to apply. Once this has been done, we go through the whole process again of reviewing and looking at the applicants and whether they do comply with our requirements. We do have a database from which we work with. We also work very closely with the export councils and the various industries. And it is always encouraged that you do use the platforms that the DTI has put in place. What I'd also like to add here is to say that we have foreign economic reps in most of our embassies abroad. And it's a very, very useful avenue to look at in terms of trying to have a footprint into that particular area or market that you wish to go into. It is a competitive industry, but there is potential, and I would strongly advise everybody to use our FARs, please. That is why we are sent abroad. That is why we are there to look at those opportunities, to identify opportunities for South African companies. We scope the investment opportunities, we scope the trade opportunities, and this is normally related back to head office, and it's up to head office then to look and see how best they can match South African companies with these foreign companies. And this is how we then come about doing these outward bound missions for the DTI. In terms of, as you can see, the logistics, once again, is about coordinating and doing the matchmaking. And that is what I spoke about, the FAR, who's on the ground in a foreign country, who's part of the role and responsibility is to identify the companies or the industries that are suited to our companies and industries in South Africa, and where we can get maximum mileage and benefits out of engaging with those companies abroad. And it is during the outward bound missions where we have, as I said, the one-on-one meetings. We also arrange site visits so that when you do go on a mission with the DTI, the FER, or the Foreign Economic Rep, will basically prepare a complete program and arrange for factory visits with a number of industries. In terms of the furniture industry, that will all be arranged. Not only will you go to factories, you will also go to showrooms to see, and you will see how they not only promote their product, but how that product is produced, and where their competitive edge is, and what we have and what we can bring to the party. All this is obviously done through EMEA and is completely coordinated and managed in terms of the logistics, with accommodation, flights, and all the meetings that goes with it. At the end of such a visit, we normally prepare an evaluation report, of which you are given a questionnaire to complete, and that report is then submitted to the DTI in terms of evaluating the impact the visit might have had to the country. Thank you. If there's any questions, I'm available later to answer them.
Thank you, Sarah, for that encouraging look into opportunities for the local furniture industry to be recognized globally as a competitive contender through exports, and also contribute towards the realization of the AU Agenda 2063 through the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. Finally, last but not definitely least, we welcome our trade partner that have broken all stereotypes of the taxman by truly being a partner to the South African furniture industry in looking for solutions to trade barriers. Mr. Charles Witbooi from the South African Reserve Services. Charles holds an MBA in strategic leadership with UNISA and has worked in a leadership position at OR Tambo for 20 years, focusing on post-clearance audits. Mr. Charles Witbooi is employed in the head office of SARS and has been with the company for the last 24 years. Currently, he is in the position of senior management, responsible for key industries. The key industry unit is mandated to engage on functional and operational issues in various industries. He's also the chairman of the SARS Furniture Forum. Charles, hand over to you.
Thank you, Jackie. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Thank you, participants, those that remained for the important presentation from SARS. It will probably be the shortest of all the presentations, taking into account that it is lunchtime now. But thanks for the opportunity, Safi, for inviting SARS and me as the chairperson of this forum. Yeah, let's skip. So as Jackie introduced myself, I'm the chairperson of the Key Industry Management Unit. This unit is mandated, and I'm going to read it, part of what is there on the screen, and then I'm going to talk through it. This unit is mandated to build partnerships through engagement with key industries regarding operational and strategic issues aimed at improving compliance, to monitor improvement of declaration compliance in selected industries, and to contribute to capacity building by enlisting specialized industry expertise to partner with SARS. Now, if you take note of the statement that is on your screen, the word compliance is used twice in that statement. And the reason why we so much emphasize on compliance is that, just as Jackie introduced SARS, is that SARS realized that it's a very expensive exercise to enforce compliance. It's very difficult to investigate industries and schemes where you have no knowledge of what is happening in that industry. So SARS, the modern SARS, has the belief that everybody wants to do good, unlike popular belief. SARS is not the monster. SARS believe that every citizen, every good citizen in South Africa wants to pay his fair share in the main. So SARS is saying that those that want to comply, we're going to make it easy. And these forums are the platforms that SARS use as an extension of their commitment to form partnerships that makes it easy for the majority of taxpayers to comply. So we put out things like e-filing, and we make it easy for people to reach us on platforms, and we have this further stakeholder engagements, etc., etc. Everything meant to make it easy for the largest population to comply. But SARS is not ignorant of those that don't want to comply. And for those that don't want to comply, we really need to partner with industry, either to identify those ones within their midst, or to assist us with the capacity to identify those. And that is essentially what the statement is saying. Can we flip the screen? Thank you. So this slide is just to inform participants that although we have this forum with the furniture industry, we also have forums with many other industries. And as you can see from popular media, some of these forums are in industries that are also heavily impacted, are also heavily affected by what we perceive and heard in this forum as illegal imports, undervalued imports, and so forth. And as you are also aware, we don't have an unending stream of resources or staff to deal with all the complaints in all the industries. And so we rely a lot on the information flow from industry. As was explained by the labor representative, Mr. Van Rooyen, earlier, I think this forum, the furniture industry forum, only started, I think, about 2 or 3 years ago. And by then I was not part of this unit. But when I joined this unit, I realized that it was a one-way street, one-way flow of information from SARS to industry about what are the trade volumes, etc., etc. And with industry in this forum, the furniture forum, we discussed the need to transform or change the shape of the forums so that industry get an opportunity to analyze their own. I can see you want me to move, but let me just finish this point. Wanted to give the industry an opportunity to also contribute to the intelligence that SARS need to improve their enforcement activities. And so I'm happy to report to the chairman, Mr. Langa, and to the participants here that actually this forum is one of the easiest for me to chair because of the level of participation from the industry and from labor in this forum. So yeah, let's go to the next slide. So these forums are constituted and mandated in terms of an external terms of reference. If you want to read it, it's available on our website under that number there. And the opportunities are actually why they have been established is to look for opportunities for collaboration between SARS and external stakeholders. And unlike what we think, or the greater population think that SARS is only there to chase after money, which we are, but we are also there for what came out of this meeting, out of this, this forum today, is that it is in our best interest for our local industries to thrive. So what we need to do as SARS is to create the environment for these industries, like the furniture industry, to be competitive. And part of the activities that we do, I will talk about in the next 2 slides, but these opportunities must create the ability for these industries to be competitive. And SARS is an important role player in the trade facilitation arm to reduce the cost of compliance. And I'll explain that a little bit later. Also, these forums provide opportunities to discuss operational and strategic issues. And as Mr. Van Rooyen mentioned, we have identified with industry that there are particular tariff headings that are causing problems for the industry, that are being used by those in the industry to avoid their responsibility. And through these forums, industry have delinked those tariff headings. And I think going forward, it might be better for industry. And those were very important things that industry has brought to the forum. Then also these forums are used to improve compliance and encourage participants to join what we call the AEO. And here I want to just explain what AEO means. AEO is authorized economic operator. And when I listened to the previous 2 presenters, it fits into the export realm, that if you want to export anything to a country that recognize our authorized economic operator status, which is what we're trying to do in firstly SACU and SADC, your product enjoy green lane treatment through those countries and into those countries. So we would really encourage local producers, local manufacturers to speak to us about the benefits of authorized economic operator status. And then the last one on that slide is to reduce the cost of enforcement. We believe that if you have this AEO status, that you will be responsible for your own customs behavior, your own customs compliance. And we as customs, because we have so little resources, human resources, would be able to focus at those parties in your industry that is actually hurting your industry, and making sure that we level the playing field. So let's yeah. So the key activities that we are as an engagement arm of customs are looking at is monitoring, partnership, capacity building, and compliance. In the space of monitoring, and I heard from a lot of speakers today, so they are complaining about cheap Chinese imports or cheap imports that are coming in. Now, part of what we do as a unit and as customs is we do monthly surveillance on specific tariff headings that we've identified in specific key industries as being heavily undervalued. So we do then investigations on those transactions. We highlight those transactions for further investigations. So where we perceive tariff headings that are problematic, and industry assists us to identify those tariff headings. Industry assists us to come up with what we call a reference price for that tariff heading based on their constituent materials. We then have a monthly surveillance of that tariff area. And once we identify that the levels of customs value declaration goes below a certain percentage threshold, we send that declaration for further investigation. The next activity that we do as part of our strategic objectives is to work with and through stakeholders, which is what we are doing today, is to form these partnerships and to have the quarterly meetings with industry. And we are measured by how much of these meetings we execute. But for me, it was more than just having a meeting. For me, it was more of what value are we extracting for business and what value we are extracting for SARS from this partnership. And I've tasked this forum to come up with specific elements that they will report on. And in our next forum in 2 weeks' time, we will come to the furniture industry with another proposal on how we can measure compliance going forward. I'm looking forward to them having robust discussions on that and coming up with counter proposals if there is. The third issue that we do under the umbrella of stakeholder engagement is to draw in the necessary capacity for our staff to be able to deal with the humongous number of different tariff headings and products. We are not experts and we don't claim to be experts, but you in your industry have the knowledge of what products you need and what products are probably hurting your industry. With this industry, I'm happy to report that we have developed the manuals. And as Mr. Van Rooyen earlier said, in 2022, we're ready to start rolling out the training. So here SARS is looking at product development or product information manual for all those industries that I've earlier highlighted. The last one is in terms of compliance, where we believe that if we put compliance in the center of our activities, and we say industry, in this forum, we want to measure you as a percentage increase in the number of participants that you brought into either AEO applications or a full AEO status. We would see this as progress. And it's something that I want to discuss with the forum at our next meeting. Okay. Here are the opportunities that I believe amid and even under the current circumstances where we have this threat of very low customs value imports, and we have the threat of dumping, perceived dumping, that these are things that industry should use and explore further. Some of them have been raised with us in a meeting before this one. But these are things that definitely I suggest industry start engaging with proposals with SARS. I could hear from some of the presentations there is a growing SMME sector in the furniture industry. And from the earlier meeting we had, there was a complaint about the big requirements for sureties and bonds to be placed. So if that is an impediment to your growth and your competitiveness, put a proposal through to SARS, participate in the forum that deals with licensing and registration. And perhaps through your active participation, these are some of the things that SARS can review, and it can be turned into an opportunity for your sector. In the small, medium business area, we also have a manager who I invited to speak to you at the next industry forum, where you can further engage on your specific needs from an SMME perspective. On the duties and rebate aspect, your dtic and ITech would probably be the better people to talk about that, but SARS administers that. So we see it as an opportunity for this sector if they want to suspend immediate layouts of cash and to realize the proceeds when it gets out of the manufacturing process, that this is definitely an opportunity to avoid the impact of what is happening with cheaper imports. And then also warehousing, where you also suspend whatever duties and VAT you need to pay until you are ready to do so and you are taking it out of the warehouse for local consumption. So ladies and gentlemen, I hope that was sweet and short. Thank you, Jackie. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Butbo, on that presentation. I think we have now come to the closing of this forum, because we've also noted there are no questions in the chat room, and we are hoping that that this forum reaps the intended outcomes and a clear action-driven plan to secure meaningful contributions as we as an industry entrench our leadership role as a meaningful sector contributor for progressive and inclusive transformation. I also want to take this opportunity to thank our participants, the panel, the SAFI team, DTIC, PSA, SARS, TIA, FPNM, CETA, and the MC and myself and the facilitators as well. I would want to leave you with a personal anecdote. I leave you with a personal anecdote that says, I was COVID-19 personified. I lived it, I felt it, I experienced it, I challenged it, I was humbled by it, and I overcame it. I believe that the triumph of the human spirit will once again prevail, and we will be the storytellers of this life-altering chapter in our life. Let us therefore remember, let us rebuild, let us come back stronger, and let us remain humbled to serve. We thank you, Enkosi, and baya danki. Tot ziens.